Continue to walk through Paul's first letter to the Thessalonians, and he's talking about Jesus' second coming and describing it. For many, it will be disastrous. It will be like a thief coming in the middle of the night. And I just want to hone in on one little phrase here that Paul says. He says, again, very well, that the day of the Lord will come like a thief in the night, when people are saying peace and security. So when we think peace, security, we think of good things. But notice the words here that Paul says. He says, then, when people are saying peace and security, suddenly, disaster will not escape. In other words, right, this peace and security that Paul's talking about, that the people have or will have at Jesus' second coming, are false peace and false security. Peace and security are, we all want it. We need it. We need that peace with security. But when it's false peace, when it's false security, it's a bad thing. And it's actually leading these people here. It says, with sudden disaster, Paul says, when Jesus' second coming will not be escaped. And, increasingly, we talk here a lot about, here at Notre Dame about our vision with having people encounter Jesus and having abundant life, and the increased hopelessness and despair that studies are indicating that's happening at rampant pace through youth and otherwise. But it's not always like this initial hopelessness and despair. There could also be, I think, what Paul's talking about, false peace, false security. And it may be more common with, the lights of screens, and maybe through money. Maybe it's in the suburbs and in the city where there's a false peace and false security, where maybe the hopelessness and the despair hasn't hit, right? Because there'll be a comment sometimes, Father Mark, well, what if somebody's not? We talk about, the importance of spreading the gospel, and because Christ and the good news of the gospel is the antidote to hopelessness and despair, and that's exactly right. Well, Father Mark, what if my grandkids and my children, like there's no hint of hopelessness or despair in them? And that might be the case. There might be a false sense of peace. There might be false security that Paul's talking about. And false peace and false security are fine until, like, bam, it hits. And then all of a sudden, you got like a thief that's there, and disaster hits. False peace, false security. I was listening, I was trying to remember which podcast I was listening to on the way back here yesterday, and but they were talking about this new TikTok trend as of late through Generation Gen Z called bed rotting. I was reading up a little bit on it this morning, and it's just a trend, and posting online, and with viral videos of how you spend the entire day in bed. Not just like recouping maybe, but you eat in bed, you scroll in bed, and it's turned into this positive thing of bed rotting. Well, where does that ultimately lend to? It will lead to hopelessness and despair, bed rotting. At first, there might be, I'm in bed and I'm consuming content. Oh, there's peace. I'm secure underneath my covers. Feels nice. False peace, false security. And so what's needed is like, what's the gospel today? I picked up yesterday evening, and picked up again the classic Spiritual Combat. And, the author is just, the whole book, Spiritual Combat, the necessity for us to live in the mindset, which is reality, that we're in the midst of a spiritual battle all the time. What is the gospel? Jesus goes down to Capernaum, and a town of Galilee. He taught on the Sabbath, and then just like this matter of fact, he's in the synagogue, and there was a man with a spirit of unclean demon. Just like matter of fact, part of the course for Jesus, part of the course for the people in the synagogue. Well, guess what? It's also part of the course for us. Because the spiritual battle is always undergoing. And the spiritual battle is needed for us. The spiritual battle is needed for us to know. Because it invokes us to get out of bed. It invokes us to stay close to the Lord, to conform our lives more and more to Him, and to stay close to the sacraments, and to not have a lousy sense of false peace and false security that will get you nowhere, other than getting you to hopelessness and despair. And so it would do us well for us to cultivate more and more this sense of spiritual battle in which Jesus engages in today. And it would do us well to have our children and our grandchildren to know about that they have an opportunity to step in the ring with Christ in the spiritual battle in which He's already won. To not get fooled for bed rotting, which may have you for a time a false sense of security and peace. And the great news, and just maybe to end here with Paul as he ends this little section, about being alert and being sober and being awake. For the Christian, Paul says, Jesus' coming is not like a robber, is not like a thief that comes in the middle of the night. That's the good news of the gospel. Is for the Christian, he's no thief. It's more or less, okay, I'm going home. And Paul ends this little section here, verse 9, 10, and 11, which is talking about the importance of encouragement. For us to be men and women who encourage, that point to Christ and the gospel, which the very essence of the gospel uplifts hearts and is good news.